I can't believe this is happening, Emma whispered to herself as she clutched the handle of her purse, trying to steady her racing heart. She had been invited to what she thought was her best friend's small wedding in a quaint little chapel downtown. But somehow, she had ended up in a massive, glittering ballroom filled with crystal chandeliers and elegantly dressed guests milling about. The soft hum of conversation and the clinking of champagne glasses made her feel even more out of place, and she instinctively looked down at the smart dress she had chosen, realizing it was far too casual for the grandeur surrounding her. Emma took a deep breath, telling herself to calm down, to blend in, but every instinct screamed that she was completely, undeniably in the wrong place. Children in perfectly coordinated outfits skipped past her, their laughter echoing off the marble floors, and she noticed a small group of photographers setting up near the front of the room, their cameras swiveling as if they were waiting for someone extraordinary to make an entrance. Her eyes wandered toward the stage at the far end, where a magnificent floral arch stood in the center, and she felt a pang of panic, wondering if she would be noticed before she could quietly slip out. As she took another step forward, trying to make herself appear casual, she accidentally brushed past a waiter carrying a tray of champagne flutes, sending a small ripple of glasses wobbling dangerously. Emma's face flushed crimson, and she quickly mumbled an apology, praying no one had really seen her clumsiness. The sound of the doors opening drew her attention, and in that moment, every head in the room turned as if drawn by some invisible magnet. Emma froze, feeling suddenly exposed, and that's when she first caught sight of him. Lucas Bennett, tall, impeccably dressed, and radiating a quiet confidence, walked in with a presence that seemed to command the entire room without a word. His eyes scanned the crowd methodically, and for a brief, heart-stopping moment, they landed on Emma. Her breath caught in her throat, and she instinctively took a step back, trying to make herself smaller, hoping to go unnoticed. But there was something in his gaze that made her heart skip a beat, something familiar yet impossible to place. Emma's mind raced, desperately trying to remember if they had ever met, and if so, when, and why it felt like the world had shrunk to just the two of them in that enormous hall. The room seemed to fade around her as she tried to gather her wits, the soft strains of the wedding music becoming a distant echo. Emma realized she had to make a decision: stay and risk an awkward confrontation, or retreat and risk being noticed at the door. She swallowed hard, the flutter of anxiety and curiosity battling inside her, and decided, almost on instinct, to move closer toward the crowd near the edge of the room, where she could observe without being immediately recognized. Her heart pounded in her chest as she walked, careful to avoid drawing attention, her eyes flicking to Lucas again, who now seemed to be scanning the guests with an intensity that made her stomach twist with anticipation. Emma's thoughts were a jumble, a whirlwind of fear, wonder, and the faintest hint of excitement, as she wondered what could possibly happen next in a place where she had no business being, yet somehow felt that she was exactly where something extraordinary was about to unfold. Emma took a careful step closer to the edge of the room, her eyes darting from one elegantly dressed guest to another, trying to make sense of the unfamiliar faces while keeping Lucas Bennett in her line of sight. The soft murmur of conversations and laughter filled the space, but for her, it was as if the world had narrowed down to the distance between her and him. She noticed a table of refreshments nearby and used it as a natural shield, letting herself blend in with guests reaching for glasses of sparkling water and small plates of hors d'oeuvres. Her mind raced with questions she had no answers for. How did she end up here? Did Lucas recognize her from somewhere? Why did it feel like a story she had no control over was unfolding around her? She adjusted the strap of her purse and forced herself to breathe slowly, trying to calm the storm of nerves that threatened to betray her presence. Lucas was now moving toward the center of the room, his posture upright, his gaze sweeping the crowd as though searching for someone he did not expect to find. Emma noticed that when his eyes landed on her for the second time, there was a brief flicker of surprise, a hesitation in his otherwise composed demeanor. She bit her lower lip and instinctively took a small step back, feeling a strange mix of relief and anticipation. Across the room, a server passed with a tray of champagne, and Emma took the opportunity to casually sip from a glass, hoping it would make her seem like she belonged, even if only for a few moments. She overheard snippets of conversation as guests chatted about the upcoming ceremony, the floral arrangements, and the impressive guest list, but her attention remained fixed on Lucas, whose presence seemed to anchor her in a strange and unfamiliar reality. Just as she thought she might have a chance to observe him unnoticed, a small commotion near the entrance caught her attention. Two children, identical in appearance and full of energy, darted into the room, laughing and holding hands as they ran past several guests. Emma froze for a moment, realizing that they were Lucas's children, or at least closely connected to him in some way, as the look on his face changed instantly from composed confidence to a mixture of astonishment and uncertainty. The energy in the room seemed to shift subtly as people turned to notice the children, but Lucas's focus never wavered from Emma, and she could sense that something significant was about to happen. She adjusted her dress and took a careful step forward, curiosity overcoming her hesitation, as the music playing softly in the background seemed to underscore the growing tension between them. Each movement, each glance, carried weight, and Emma could feel the story unfolding in real time around her, as if the events of the evening were carefully orchestrated to bring them into this unexpected intersection of lives. She felt a mixture of fear and excitement, knowing that every decision she made in the next few moments could change the trajectory of the evening, and perhaps something far greater than she had anticipated. Her thoughts continued to spiral, but she held her head high, determined to face whatever came next, knowing that the encounter was unavoidable and that the story she was now part of was just beginning to reveal itself. Emma took another careful step forward, her eyes locked on Lucas Bennet as he knelt briefly to greet the two children, his expression a mix of awe and disbelief. She could see the subtle shift in his posture, the way his shoulders tensed and relaxed, as if he were trying to process something that had completely taken him by surprise. The children giggled and tugged at his hands, their excitement filling the room, and Emma could not help but smile softly, realizing that this moment was far bigger than she had imagined when she had accidentally walked into the grand ballroom. Guests murmured around her, some pointing discreetly, others whispering to their companions, and Emma felt the weight of being observed yet remained determined to maintain her composure. She adjusted her dress and took a deep breath, allowing herself a moment to gather courage before moving a little closer to the center of the room, keeping her steps measured and her eyes on Lucas. As she did, she noticed that he had finally turned his full attention toward her, his expression a blend of shock, curiosity, and something unspoken that made her pulse quicken. She could feel the intensity of the unspoken connection stretching across the space between them, each second drawing them closer to an inevitable confrontation. The soft strains of classical music filled the air, accentuating the elegance of the scene, while the glow from the chandeliers highlighted the subtle expressions on each guest's face. Emma could see Lucas take a deep, steadying breath, his hand brushing lightly over one of the children as if to reassure them, but his eyes never left hers, and she realized that the moment they had both been unaware of was now unavoidable. She felt her stomach flutter with anticipation as she allowed herself to step slightly forward, enough that their proximity was undeniable, and for a brief instant, the entire room seemed to fade around them, leaving only the charged space between Emma, Lucas, and the two children. The sense of time stretching, of every movement and glance carrying significance, made her heart race, yet she felt a strange calm settling over her as well, a recognition that despite the confusion and unexpectedness of the evening, this was exactly where she needed to be. Emma could sense Lucas's mind racing, piecing together the fragments of reality that now converged so unexpectedly, and she prepared herself to face whatever questions or surprises might come, knowing that the next words exchanged could define the trajectory of the night. Guests continued their conversations around them, but for Emma, all that mattered was the electric anticipation of the first words that would bridge the distance, the acknowledgement of a shared understanding, and the unfolding story that was beginning to write itself in real time as she stood just a few feet away from Lucas Bennet, the man whose presence had transformed a simple mistaken entrance into a moment that neither of them would forget. Lucas Bennet took a cautious step forward, his eyes never leaving Emma as if trying to read every unspoken thought crossing her face. Emma felt the weight of his gaze, a mixture of surprise, curiosity, and something that hinted at recognition from a past she could not quite place, and it sent a shiver of anticipation down her spine. The children tugged gently at Lucas's hands, their laughter still ringing in the air, and he lowered himself to their level, speaking softly in a way that made Emma realize just how gentle he could be beneath the composed exterior that had commanded the attention of the entire room moments before. Guests continued to murmur and glance their way, sensing the significance of the interaction, yet it felt to Emma as though a bubble had formed around her and Lucas, isolating them in a moment suspended between tension and discovery. She adjusted her posture, straightening her back and holding her head high, determined to project confidence despite the whirlwind of emotions surging through her. Lucas finally straightened, his gaze softening slightly but still carrying a hint of astonishment, and for a brief moment, neither spoke, the silence stretching as both of them measured the unspoken truths hanging in the air. Emma could feel her pulse quicken, her thoughts racing to anticipate his reaction, to imagine what he might say, or if he would simply turn away and leave the mystery unresolved. Instead, he took another careful step closer, closing the distance with deliberate, measured movements, his eyes scanning her face as if committing every detail to memory. The children now sat cross-legged on the floor nearby, momentarily distracted by a decorative arrangement, giving the adults a space that felt both tense and intimate. Emma took a deep breath, her fingers clutching the strap of her purse, and she allowed herself a small, tentative smile, testing the waters, as if daring to break the silence without speaking a single word. Lucas's expression softened further, a flicker of recognition sparking in his eyes, and he finally opened his mouth, his voice calm, yet laced with the weight of emotion. Emma felt every syllable hang between them, each one a thread weaving the beginning of understanding. The ambient sounds of the ballroom, the soft classical music, the gentle chatter of guests, the clinking of glasses, seemed to fade into the background, leaving only the charged space of this delicate confrontation. Every subtle movement, every glance, carried significance, and Emma realized that what had started as an accidental intrusion had become a pivotal moment where past, present, and unforeseen futures converged. Lucas's gaze never wavered, and for the first time, Emma felt that the confusion and fear that had plagued her upon entering the grand room were replaced with a cautious, fragile hope. She sensed that the next exchange, the words and gestures they shared in the following minutes, could reshape the trajectory of the evening, perhaps even more than she had dared to imagine, and she steeled herself to face the unfolding reality with honesty and openness, ready to embrace whatever revelations lay ahead. Lucas Bennett took a slow, deliberate step closer, his eyes fixed on Emma with a mixture of astonishment and curiosity that made her stomach flutter with nervous anticipation. She could see the way his jaw tightened slightly, as if he were holding back words, and the subtle rise and fall of his chest indicated that he was taking careful control of his emotions. The children, now sitting cross-legged on the polished marble floor, glanced up at them occasionally, their innocent laughter and whispered comments adding a gentle backdrop to the intense, unspoken conversation taking place between the adults. Emma shifted her weight slightly, adjusting her purse strap and smoothing the front of her dress, trying to appear composed even as her heart raced uncontrollably. She noticed Lucas's eyes flicker toward the children again, and then back to her, the moment stretching as if time itself had slowed down to allow for the weight of realization and recognition to settle fully. Each breath she took seemed amplified, echoing quietly in the elegant space of the ballroom, and she could feel the nervous energy vibrating subtly between them. Lucas finally spoke, his voice measured yet gentle. "I did not expect to see you here," he said, his words calm but carrying the gravity of someone processing a surprise that was more complicated than mere coincidence. Emma's lips parted slightly, caught between responding honestly and maintaining the careful poise she had held since entering the room. "I was not supposed to be here," she admitted softly, her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. "I thought this was another wedding, and I must have walked into the wrong place." Lucas nodded slowly, his expression shifting from surprise to contemplation, the tension in his posture easing slightly as he absorbed her explanation. The children, sensing the change in atmosphere, giggled softly, and began to play quietly with the edge of a decorative ribbon on the floor, their innocence contrasting with the charged emotions of the adults. Emma took a hesitant step closer, emboldened by Lucas's softened demeanor, and he met her halfway with careful steps of his own, closing the distance, yet leaving space for comfort and respect. The gentle murmur of other guests continued in the background, but Emma felt a sense of isolation in the best possible way, as if this moment belonged solely to them. Lucas glanced toward the children again, and then back at Emma, his eyes filled with a mix of recognition and cautious curiosity, as if weighing the possibilities that had just emerged. "It seems we have quite a situation to figure out," he said, a faint smile breaking through the initial tension, his tone lightening without losing sincerity. Emma nodded, feeling a rush of relief mingled with anticipation, and allowed herself a small, genuine smile in return, realizing that the accidental entrance into this grand ballroom had led to a moment of connection and understanding she had not expected, but somehow felt she was ready to explore. Each subtle movement, each glance, and the unspoken acknowledgement between them set the stage for a conversation that promised clarity, emotion, and perhaps the beginning of something entirely new in the midst of the dazzling chaos of the wedding around them. Emma felt a mixture of relief and curiosity as Lucas Bennett took a step closer, his calm presence giving her a strange sense of reassurance despite the whirlwind of emotions swirling in the grand ballroom. The children were now quietly seated nearby, sharing a small toy and whispering to one another, their innocence casting a peaceful backdrop to the charged atmosphere between the adults. Emma adjusted the strap of her purse and smoothed her dress, trying to maintain composure while her heart raced with anticipation. Lucas studied her face carefully, his expression softening as he processed the unexpected encounter, and for the first time since she had arrived, Emma sensed a genuine interest in his eyes, a curiosity that mirrored her own. "It seems we were both caught off guard," Lucas said, his voice steady and considerate, carrying a warmth that put Emma slightly at ease. She nodded, her lips curving into a tentative smile, recognizing the vulnerability and honesty behind his words. The room around them continued its gentle hum of conversation, but Emma felt insulated from it, as if a private bubble had formed around their interaction, highlighting the importance of the moment. She took a cautious step forward, closing the gap slightly while respecting the invisible boundary Lucas maintained, and he responded with a subtle nod, acknowledging the shared space and the beginning of a fragile trust. The soft glow of the chandeliers reflected in his eyes, and Emma was struck by the depth of emotion she could sense without a single word being exchanged. Lucas glanced toward the children briefly, ensuring they were engaged and safe, before returning his full attention to Emma, the way he held her gaze communicating more than words ever could. She felt a flutter of anticipation, realizing that this moment was the start of a meaningful dialogue, an opportunity to clarify misunderstandings and connect on a level neither had expected. The subtle strains of music played on, and Emma allowed herself to take a slow, deliberate breath, feeling the tension ease slightly as she prepared to speak. Lucas's posture relaxed further, his shoulders no longer rigid, indicating that he was open to whatever conversation was about to unfold. "I suppose we have some explaining to do," Emma said softly, her voice steady yet infused with a gentle curiosity, acknowledging the layers of complexity in their encounter. Lucas smiled faintly, a mixture of amusement and understanding, and nodded, signaling that he was ready to listen and engage. The children giggled softly in the background, their presence grounding the adults in a shared moment of reality and humanity, reminding Emma of the importance of honesty, patience, and openness. As she looked up at Lucas, she sensed that despite the initial shock and the unexpected circumstances, a path toward understanding, connection, and perhaps even a new beginning was unfolding in real time, right here in the midst of the elegant chaos that had once seemed so overwhelming. Every glance, every gesture, and every word exchanged now carried weight, setting the stage for a conversation that promised clarity, emotional resonance, and the first steps toward a story neither of them could have anticipated but were now ready to explore together. Emma felt a wave of determination wash over her as she took a careful step closer to Lucas Bennett, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of curiosity and quiet resolve. The soft glow of the chandeliers above reflected off the polished marble floor, casting delicate patterns that seemed to frame the moment in a gentle light, and the murmur of other guests faded into the background, leaving only the subtle hum of the room and the charged space between them. Lucas adjusted his stance slightly, his shoulders relaxing further as he maintained eye contact, and Emma could sense the careful calculation in his movements, as if he were weighing every gesture and word before committing to action. The children were now leaning against a low floral arrangement, whispering and giggling, their innocence providing a contrast to the complex emotions that hung in the air between the adults. Emma took a deep breath, allowing herself to anchor in the present, and she began speaking with deliberate clarity. "I did not mean to intrude. I truly thought I was at another wedding, and I never imagined I would walk into something so important." Her voice carried a calm honesty, and she could see Lucas's expression soften as he absorbed her words, his gaze thoughtful and attentive. He nodded slowly, a faint smile appearing as he replied, "It is unexpected, but I appreciate your honesty. It is not often that someone steps into a situation like this with such grace." Emma felt a flicker of relief, recognizing that his tone was sincere and that the tension between them was beginning to ease, replaced by a sense of mutual understanding. She noticed the subtle shifts in his demeanor, the way his eyes softened when they met hers, and the small gestures that revealed a vulnerability beneath the composed exterior he projected to the room. The soft music playing in the background seemed to underscore the conversation, highlighting the contrast between the elegance of the surroundings and the human emotions unfolding in this intimate space. Lucas gestured gently toward the children, who now held hands and giggled softly, and said, "It seems they are as surprised as we are, yet somehow perfectly at ease. Perhaps there is a lesson there for us." Emma allowed herself a small, genuine laugh, the sound light and unguarded, and she felt a sense of connection forming in that simple exchange, a bridge built from honesty, observation, and shared curiosity. She took another measured step closer, feeling the warmth of his presence and the unspoken invitation to continue the conversation, to explore the layers of misunderstanding, recognition, and possibility that had converged so unexpectedly. The room continued to shimmer with quiet elegance, but for Emma, the world had narrowed to the space shared with Lucas Bennett, the children nearby, and the unfolding dialogue that promised clarity, emotion, and the beginning of a story neither of them had anticipated but were now ready to navigate together. Emma felt a newfound confidence as she continued to engage with Lucas Bennett, each word and gesture deepening the fragile bridge of understanding that had begun to form between them. The soft ambient music of the ballroom provided a gentle rhythm to their exchange, blending seamlessly with the murmurs of guests around them who remained oblivious to the quiet intensity developing near the floral arch. The children sat nearby, occasionally glancing up with innocent curiosity, their laughter providing a light-hearted contrast to the concentrated energy between Emma and Lucas. She adjusted the strap of her purse, ensuring that her posture conveyed both composure and openness, and spoke with deliberate clarity. "I never imagined I would encounter something like this, and yet it feels as though I was meant to be here, even if by accident." Lucas regarded her thoughtfully, a flicker of surprise and understanding crossing his features, and he nodded slightly, acknowledging the honesty and vulnerability in her statement. "Sometimes the most unexpected events lead to the most meaningful moments," he replied, his voice calm and measured, carrying a warmth that invited trust and further dialogue. Emma felt a subtle sense of relief, recognizing that his words were genuine and that the tension that had initially clouded their interaction was giving way to a growing sense of mutual respect and curiosity. She observed the careful way Lucas moved, his posture relaxed yet purposeful, indicating that he was fully present in the moment, attuned to the nuances of the conversation and the significance of their unexpected meeting. The chandeliers above cast a gentle glow over the scene, highlighting the elegance of the room and reflecting softly in Lucas's eyes, adding a quiet intensity to the connection they were building. Emma allowed herself a soft, tentative smile, noticing how Lucas responded with a similar expression that conveyed both reassurance and an unspoken willingness to engage further. The children, sensing the change in atmosphere, giggled quietly and began to play with a decorative ribbon on the floor, their presence grounding the adults in a shared reality that was both tender and unforced. Emma took a slow, deliberate breath, feeling the weight of the evening and the significance of their encounter settle around her, and she allowed her curiosity and intuition to guide her next words, carefully choosing expressions that balanced honesty with respect. Lucas listened attentively, his gaze never wavering, and offered responses that were thoughtful and measured, creating a rhythm of conversation that was both natural and deeply engaging. As the minutes passed, Emma realized that the accidental entrance into this grand ballroom had evolved into a moment of genuine connection, one that promised clarity, understanding, and the potential for a story that neither she nor Lucas could have anticipated but were now beginning to explore together. Each glance, each word, and each gesture contributed to the unfolding narrative, a delicate balance of emotion, observation, and quiet anticipation that set the stage for the resolution and the new paths their evening was about to take. Emma took a final, measured breath, feeling the weight of the evening settle into a delicate balance of relief and anticipation as she stood facing Lucas Bennett, their conversation now flowing with a sense of ease and mutual understanding that had been absent only moments before. The soft strains of music continued to weave through the grand ballroom, accentuating the elegance of the setting and lending a gentle rhythm to the quiet intimacy forming between them. The children, now engaged in a small game of quietly stacking decorative blocks near the floral arch, provided a warm and light-hearted backdrop, their laughter punctuating the air and reminding Emma of the unexpected joy that had accompanied her accidental entrance. She adjusted her dress and purse, standing tall and composed, yet her heart raced with a mixture of excitement and curiosity as she prepared to engage fully in the dialogue that had been building throughout the evening. Lucas's gaze remained steady and attentive, his expression a combination of contemplation and subtle warmth, and Emma sensed that he was carefully considering every word, every gesture, and every nuance of the unfolding interaction. She allowed herself a small, genuine smile, and he responded with one of his own, the kind of smile that conveyed acknowledgement, understanding, and a quiet invitation to continue exploring the connection they had discovered in such an unexpected setting. The guests continued their soft chatter around them, but for Emma, the world had narrowed to the shared space between herself, Lucas, and the children, each moment filled with a subtle electricity of anticipation and openness. She spoke with deliberate care, articulating her thoughts in a calm, measured tone. "I never expected to find myself here, yet I feel as though this encounter was meant to happen, and I am grateful for the chance to understand it fully." Lucas nodded slowly, his eyes reflecting both recognition and a growing curiosity, and he replied, "I feel the same way. It is rare to have such an unexpected meeting that carries so much clarity and potential for understanding." Emma felt a surge of hope, recognizing that the accidental intrusion had led not only to honesty and conversation, but to a moment of genuine connection that neither of them had anticipated yet both were ready to embrace. The soft lighting of the chandeliers glimmered over the polished floors, and Emma could see the subtle reflections dancing in Lucas's eyes, highlighting the depth of emotion and attention he brought to their shared experience. She took a careful step closer, closing the final distance with grace and intention, and he mirrored her movement, maintaining an appropriate space that respected both comfort and the intimacy of the moment. The children's quiet laughter and whispers continued as a gentle accompaniment, reminding them both of the innocence and joy that could exist even in a complex, unexpected scenario. Emma felt a sense of closure for the confusion that had begun the evening and an opening for the possibilities that lay ahead, the delicate balance of emotions, observations, and shared moments setting the stage for a new chapter that neither she nor Lucas could have predicted but were now prepared to navigate together. Every glance, every word, and every small gesture contributed to the unfolding story, leaving Emma with a profound sense of anticipation and the quiet reassurance that what had started as a mistake could become a meaningful beginning.